we're going to talk about title, transfer of title, all of those things. And this is the basics of real estate. Everything we're talking about today is about, okay, if you don't understand this stuff, how in the heck are you going to sell real estate? So, our legal descriptions. In order for us to transfer title, we have to be able to say, well, what is this house that I'm transferring? What is this piece of property am I transferring? And it needs to be clear. And that means we need to give what's called a legal description. And you see it here, a description of a specific parcel of real estate that's going to be complete enough for an independent surveyor to locate it and identify it. And we know we have three different ways we can do this. It could be meets and bounds, it could be the government rectangular survey system, or you could refer to an already recorded map of the lot and block system. But what we do know, anytime you're talking about giving property to somebody, transferring title, we most definitely want to go beyond our street address. So let's start with our first way to transfer title. The first and the oldest way, we would say, hey, let me go beyond, I'm giving you the house over there. The first way we did this was with meets and bounds. And you should know that meets are distance and directions, and our bounds are boundaries. All right. So let me kind of show this to you. Now I'm going to show you a different map version, but you see when it comes to a legal document, they could either do a map or they could do this kind of written stuff right here. But here's just a pretend map. Right. What happens is, and let me choose a nice bright color. Let's choose this color. There would be what we call a point of beginning. See it right here? Every time somebody is trying to describe a piece of property, they're creating a perimeter or an outline of the property. And they're saying, hey, I'm going to start here. I know that's hard to read, but we're going to start there. And they're going to tell you, hey, I'm going to go so many feet in this direction. So in this case, it would be 425 feet west. And then you get to a stopping point where there's going to be a monument, something that's either like a giant stone or a mountain or the edge of a water, or something like that. Sometimes in modern days, they'll put in a stake, whether it's a piece of metal or something like that. They'll say, look, get to this point and stop. Once you stop at that point, you're going to go a certain amount of feet, this case 225 north, and then you're going to stop. And then they're going to tell you, oh, we're going to go northeast. I didn't label how many direct feet that was, but let's call it 600 feet. And then you're going to stop. And then you're going to go, oh, 310 feet south. See? And then you start at your point of beginning. That is the key you need to know. Every time you have a point of beginning, you measure the perimeter of this piece of property and you end at the point of beginning as well. That is your meets and bounds. And remember, guys, it could either be in a map or it could be written out on a deed. So, anytime you've seen a survey, and I know you all have seen these guys on the side of the road doing stuff. They are a surveyor, and what they're doing is the official version of what we just saw. What I showed you was the cartoon version. What I'm showing you now is an actual survey. And honestly, guys, this thing is so old. Look at this. It's a real survey from some clients I had back in 2007. It's like 20 years ago. Did I take out their name information? Yeah, for some privacy. But if I blow this up, what you'll see is, you know what? This could be our point of beginning. And then you see they went northwest for 226 feet. And then they went northeast for 60 feet. And here are your monuments. And then they went southeast for 151.57 feet. And then they went here, and you can see it follows the curve of the road. Every time you see a survey, it is a meets and bounds description done by a surveyor. And you know it's a surveyor because you've got up here what we call the seal. That's just a special legal way of saying, you know what, this is actually real. This is the surveyor seal. Now, obviously, that was North Carolina, and it gets recorded at the Register of Deeds, which we'll get to later. When you're helping people buy houses, it's not uncommon for them to get surveys because they want to make sure, okay, well, how much land did I get? Is my house encroaching? Maybe they had poured extra driveway here. Maybe they encroached onto this property. You want to know all of those things. Right? So this is going to be what we think about, this meets and bounds. It is the original survey. This survey, which was drawn, that could get recorded at the Register of Deeds. I said it was recorded at the Register of Deeds, but usually they're not. These could be recorded at the Register of Deeds, but usually if you're doing something like that, you're trying to use it as evidence for something. This is a survey. It is your meets and bounds description. The oldest way to describe a piece of property, because now you can say, oh, now that you know what I'm talking about, what you're getting is everything in this space. You created a perimeter and telling them this is the area this person is receiving, right? Now, sometimes you'll see something similar at the Register of Deeds, and that is called a plat. Oh, I'll just skip this for a second. Boop, boop, boop. And skip to a plat. This is a plat, and I'm going to blow this up for you real quick. See, it says final plat, and this is sheet 1 of 2 of Three Meadows subdivision. This is a real plat. I pull these from the Register of Deeds. In fact, you can see, even though this is North Carolina, here's where it was recorded in Johnston County, Plat Book 87, page 4 and 5. This is a plat that also has a seal on it from a surveyor. And a plat is a fancy name for a subdivision map. That's a plat. It's a map. It's meets and bounds again. It's meets and bounds of all of the lots in this subdivision. So you see here's lot 1, here's lot 2, here's lot 3, here's lot 4, and it goes on and on and on. And if you blow it up, now this is going to be hard to read, but you can see how this lot, let's say lot 20, it's hard to read, but there's the distance there, and here's a distance here, and here's a distance here, and they're telling you, oh, you need to go this way, and so it's like a mini lot survey, except it's for all the lots. So that anybody who wants to see the layout of the subdivision, you could see that. Here you've got some kind of wetlands. I don't know if you all can read that. There's an easement. I know it's hard for you to read here, but there's an easement. So you can see, even if you're the first person to buy into this subdivision and you want this corner cul-de-sac lot 14, even though the rest of the subdivision hasn't been built, you know what lot 29 would look like. You know what lot 30 would look like. It's very similar to what you would see if you go to new home communities, which is basically this. It's a watered down version where they say, oh, lot 34 is gone, lot 9 is gone, lot 26 is gone, lot 36, but we do have lot 35 if you're available. Those are based off of plats. And by the time you have a plat, this has been recorded at the Register of Deeds. Now, because this plat has these different lots and it gets recorded at the Register of Deeds, that's just another plat. You can describe land by referring to a plat that's been recorded. We call this the block and lot system. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand. So basically, if you were buying a house, you could say, oh, you know what? I want to buy lot 141 that's in this subdivision, and it was recorded right here, wherever this was here. And because it was recorded, I want lot 141 that was in plat book something on page something. And now everybody's on the same page about what it is you're buying. Make sense? Hopefully so. Because those words survey and plat, they're very similar, but a survey is usually going to be one lot. A plat is all of the lots in a subdivision. The plat always is going to be recorded. Usually a survey is not unless it's a part of something else. Right? So when we talk about a lot and block system, back in the day before we had these weird shaped subdivisions, what you would see, especially if you've ever been in like a neighborhood that was older in a city where you have city blocks and then you have a house on a block. Well, you see here the dark blue is a block. This would be a city block. And then that's not how you spell block. Doot, doot, doot. And then this would be maybe 121 Happy Street. That's a lot in this particular city block. And usually, once again, there's some layout of a map somewhere that'll tell you, hey, well, what subdivision are we even in? So they go hand in hand. Remember, so far we've talked about meets and bounds, which is what you see on a survey. And when you have a survey of a subdivision, that's what we call a plat. And on that plat, you'll see lot and block. I know that's kind of small, but hopefully you can follow this here. Meets and bounds is the perimeter of the property. You have an official survey of just that one property. And if you have a survey of an entire subdivision, that's what we call a plat. And on that plat, you can find individual lots that can be part of a block, which is we can refer to a previously recorded document. So we got one way we could just do a plain meets and bounds, or two, we could refer to something that's recorded. But remember, I started this and I said, hey, there are three ways to describe a house or describe a lot. The meets and bounds, the lot and block, and then you've got the government rectangular survey system. Doom, doom, doom. I wish I could have some actually dramatic music because everybody gets so uptight about this, but it's actually not too bad. It's actually not too bad. However, if we're only going to take one thing away from this part of rectangular survey system, it's the fact that there are 43,560 square feet in an acre. I mean, if you want to press fast forward and be I don't care, I don't get it. As long as there are 43,560 square feet in an acre, I don't know if you're going to be tested on the rest of this government rectangular survey system, but I do know someplace on that test, they want you to remember the number 43,560, which if you need help remembering that number, sometimes people will say, four old ladies going 35 when they should be going 60. Or some people will teach this as 7-11 because we know 4 plus 3, that's our 7. And then 11 is our 5 plus 6. So 7-11. And then don't forget you need to add a 0. I personally like to remember it even when I took this class more than 20 years ago. I mean, you all can see I was already selling houses in 2007. I like to remember the, sequence 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, I've known 3, 4, 5, 6 and how to count since I could talk. If I could remember 3, 4, 5, 6, I could remember the number of feet, square feet in an acre because what I do is I switch the 3 and the 4 and I add in a 0. So if I switch the 3 and the 4, it'd be 43, 560, and that gives me 43,560. Is it convoluted? Yes. Does it make sense to my brain? Also, yes. Do I know I have problems? Yeah. But whatever it is, you gotta choose a way to remember this. I once had a student that said Richard Petty, the race car driver, was number 43, and he won 56 races and zero after he retired. I don't know. I don't watch NASCAR, but if that resonates with you, I don't care. If you've got your own sport, maybe your birthday is in April and your mother's birthday is in March and your father's birthday is in May. Look, whatever you need to do to memorize it, just make sure you memorize it. Having said all that, you need to remember that the government rectangular survey system is applied to most of the United States. And when I say most of the United States, and let me pause by this four-way. If you all are new to real estate, you may not realize how big an acre is. You could put 18 average sized homes on 1 acre. An acre of land is like the size of a football field without the sidelines. I mean, this is just a random 1,584 random potatoes could line up. Okay, that just sounds crazy. But having said that, if you're talking about like, oh, an acre doesn't sound that big, 16 tennis courts, about 60% of a soccer field, right? If you watched Yellowstone, that ranch was 776,900 acres. What? That's a lot of that is crazy town. So just so you have an idea what an acre is, I can tell you, oh, there's 43,560 square feet in an acre. But do you understand I'm saying it's most of a football field? An acre is a lot of land. Moving on. I digress. Or that was just a little side quest. This is a map of the United States. Got this from the interwebs. And you see anything that's in this color that's been colored in, that is a state that is a part of the United States that uses the government rectangular survey system. Notice Texas does not, because Texas is Texas. And most of our eastern, our original states, our East Coast, yeah, that was been around for a while, so they don't use it either. So not every state uses the government rectangular survey system. Most states do, just not all states. So you can see here, some states are, completely separate, but a lot of these states have different colors in them. So you see how right here, and let me change colors. Arkansas, there's a baseline and there's a principal meridian. And where these two places meet, every piece of land in this green swatch is described by how far is it from where these two lines and this particular color are. So if you look here, that's all of this. If you're in North Dakota, let's say you live right here. This is where you live. Hey, that's your little spot. We're giving a legal description that is saying, hey, how far am I from this spot where these two lines crossed? That's meets and bounds. I'm not meets and bounds. That's the government rectangular survey system. So if you live here, you're going to go in this section and say, oh, how close am I to where this principal meridian and baseline live? If you're in California, you got this one here, you got this one here, you got this one. I mean, it's all over the place. I happen to live in a state now, Michigan, that it's only got one principal meridian and baseline. How and why these sections were set up the way they were, I have no friggin' idea. But when you think of the government rectangular survey system, somebody back in the day thought it was a good idea to say, let's talk about this piece of land and give it a description that talks about how far it is from this spot right there. I okay, if that's what they got. But I guess before the internet and before satellite dishes and whatnot, this made a lot of sense. So, this whole system is based off of longitude lines and latitude lines. Longitude, latitude. I know you know what these are. They're the imaginary lines that, are all over the globe. And we always talk about, oh, hey, Trix, hola. How far or how close you are to a longitude and latitude. That's what this is based off. So when we look at those words, baseline and principal meridian, they're based off of longitude and latitudes. So a township line, right? A township line, because this word township is key. You're going to have to know this word township. Well, here's what happens. Remember, we've got those imaginary longitude and latitude lines. And we talked about how, there's our different sections here. So let's say we were in Illinois. You got a baseline and you got a principal meridian. Right? So for whatever colored section it is on the map, you would have a baseline, which is this going all the way across, right? That's your baseline. And then going up and down, you have a principal meridian. And of course, you saw on the map that those are named and they've got numbers. But you have a baseline, which is going east and west, and you have a principal meridian that's going north and south. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is make a whole bunch of lines, imaginary lines across the land based off of that baseline and principal meridian. So from your principal meridian, remember your principal meridian is this thing that goes up and down. They're going to go 6 miles, and then you're going to have a range line. And then you're going to go 6 miles, and there's another range line. And then they go 6 miles, and then there's another range line. I mean, it just keeps going on forever and ever and ever. And it goes to the east, but it also goes to the west. So you could have a range line that is 1, 2, 3, 4 miles away from the principal meridian. That's 4 miles away. So those are what we're going to call our township lines, the first part of our township lines. That's going to be our ranges. So if you think of the song, Home, Home on the Range, where the deer and the antelope play. I love that song. Where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day, which sounds terrible. I don't like the sun. We're all going to get skin cancer, but I still love that song. All right. Side quest on our song there. Why is it a zigzag? Which one, Trix? Why is which one a zigzag? Why are these a zigzag? Oh, I know what you're talking about. We're going to get to the zigzag. I know what you're talking about. That's later. I'm going to get there. Right? So every 6 miles from your principal meridian, you have a range line. Right? And then every 6 miles, let me choose another color. Let's do red. From your baseline, you go 6 miles. And then you go here. And then you go another 6 miles. And then you go another 6 miles. And then you go another 6 miles. So what you get is a 6 mile. You're going 6 miles from here to here. And you're going 6 miles from from here to here. You get this 6 mile by 6 mile block of land. And we're going to call that a township. Just remember, the ranges go off the principal meridian, and the tiers go off the baseline. Think of tiers like a tier on a cake. If this was a wedding cake, You'd have layer 1, and then you'd have layer 2 if it wasn't cake, and then you'd have layer 3 if this was a wedding cake, and then you'd have layer 4 if this was a wedding cake. And of course, you'd have your little people here. Hey, there's a person. And then you'd have him holding hands with his wife, who's a stick person, whichever. This is a wedding cake. It's a very hideous wedding cake. They're still going to color it in. But all of these different levels of your wedding cake, the different levels going up, these are going to be tiers. And just remember, tiers are like tiers on a wedding cake, and ranges go right to left. All right, but we're going to get to that zigzag. Now, because you've created these townships, and really what I should say is imagine this whole thing right here is a township. So all of this that I'm coloring in, we blew it up. Pretend that this is this right here. Because we had different townships. Let's choose a different color. Let's say it's this right here. That township goes 6 miles, and it goes 6 miles, right? That 6 mile by 6 mile thing is a township. And what we're going to do is break it into 36 sections. And each of these sections are 1 mile. So 1 mile from here to here. And they're going to be, it's hard to read, 1 mile from here to here. So you take this 6 by 6 mile township and we split it up into 36 sections. And this is what I think you are asking, Trix. You are asking, why is the numbering zigzag? Well, imagine Washington, D.C. is over here. It's to the east. And if you are trying to measure out the land, imagine you have a horse, you're doing whatever, and this guy starts here. He says, you know what? I'm going to measure for 1 mile. And then I'm going to measure for 2 miles. And then I'm going to measure 3 miles. And then 4 miles. And then 5 miles. And then 6 miles. And then you've run out of miles to keep going to the left. We could have him turn all the way back around and count mile 7, mile 8, mile 9, mile 10, mile 11, mile 12. But that sounds like a terrible idea. Instead, a genius, who happened to be Thomas Jefferson, said, instead of doing that, what if we have you, fine sir, once you get here, go down. And now this can be mile 7, and this can be mile 8, and this can be mile 9, and this could be mile 10, this could be mile 11, and this could be mile 12. And we could have you come all the way back to the other side, but nope, let's just start over. And this is mile 13, and this is mile 14, and this is mile 15, this is mile 16. You get the whole point. That's why it's zigzag, because it just makes more sense if somebody was counting this out. You started on yeah, that's the way they would walk without GPS. Yes, exactly. I mean, nobody wants to just start over. It's kind of like when you vacuum and you got those lines and you want to make sure, if you don't want those crisscrossing lines, whether you're vacuuming or mowing the lawn, you want to be very careful and go back where you came. No, ain't nobody got time for that. That's why it's zigzag. And it is important to know you start at the most northeastern corner and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you go down and you count 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you go down. That is really important. We got to know that. So what we've basically done is taken the entire country, and based on this principal meridian and baseline, we've created these townships. And if that's a township, We take that township and split it into 36 sections. I know that's hard to read. I'm sorry. But you get the point. All right. Moving on. Like a shortcut. Yeah, like a shortcut. Exactly. Okay. So now you got this 1 mile by 1 mile right here piece of land because it's a section. This is 1 mile from here to here, and it's 1 mile from here to here. That is a lot of land. And just in case you don't understand how much it is 640 acres. If you took 640 football fields and laid them out, that is the size of a section, right? That's 640 football fields. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a lot. So what they did is they said, look, we may have a section that still has 640 acres, but that's too much land. That's still too much land. Let's let's further split this up. And so what they do is they quarter it. They said, okay, we've got this section right here. But what if we were to quarter this? So now this would be the northwest quarter, and this would be the southwest quarter, and this would be the southeast quarter, which, okay, that's fine. But then they're going to quarter that again. So they would take that and they say, hey, let's quarter that. And now you would have a quarter of a quarter. And here's a different quarter of a quarter. And here's a different quarter of a quarter. And that's still a lot of land. So they would say, all right, let's split it again. And they would say, oh, let's quarter one of those sections here and here. So now this would be a quarter. And this would be a quarter. And this would be a quarter. And oh, look, that's still a lot of land. So what are they going to do? They, so itty bitty, quarter it again. So now you have a quarter. You have a quarter. So what I'm saying is when you have this section, we're going to quarter it. And then we quarter it again, quarter it again, quarter it again. So if you bought this piece of land right here, it's a quarter of this quarter, which is a quarter of this quarter, which is a quarter of the entire gosh darn section. Which remember is this is number 1 of 36. This is a lot of land, and that's why we needed to have a way to do it. So we would say, oh, you want to buy this piece of land in the orange right here? Well, let's see if I have a description of it. This would be, I don't have one written out, but I could tell you this piece right here would be the northeast quarter of, that's this box here, the northwest quarter, because we're talking about this right here, and that is in the of the southeast quarter, because we're talking about, oh, that box is the southeast quarter of this box, and that box I just outlined is the northeast quarter of this entire section. Boop, boop. There we go. And that section could be section, I don't know, 14 that's in township, I don't know, and there would be a township, and that might be, well, I forgot what it was here earlier. It had a township number. Where'd this thing go? Didn't I have a township number? It may not matter. Oh, yeah, here it is. of this particular township. You see how this has a name right here? T4N R5E. Basically, you started somewhat bigger, and then from that bigger, you were like, uh-oh, let's make it smaller. Let's put 36 sections in, and then this one section gets blown up. And then from that one section, you quarter it, and you quarter it, and you quarter it, and you quarter it. So hopefully that makes sense. I went over it pretty quickly, but I think you all know I have a YouTube video that goes into a much better, not hand-drawn version of this. But it makes sense. If you watch this or you listen to this and you're like, okay, yeah, that kind of tracks, that makes sense, then you have an understanding good enough for this test. You're not studying to be a surveyor, so don't stress. Stop it. So, what else do I want you to know about this section? I want you to remember there are 36, and let's make that better. Whoosh. There are 36 sections in a township. Remember? And that was what went all winky dinky. Went this way, and then this way, and then we went this way, and we went this way, and then we went down here, and went that way, and that way. There was 36 of those. There were 36 sections, and each section has 640 acres. You got to know that. Then you also need to know that since every section has 640 acres, right? Because a section is going to be 1 mile by 1 mile. And by the way, a mile is 5,280 feet. 5,200 feet. And I teach that as 5 tomatoes, 5280, 5 tomatoes. We know there are 640 acres and there are 43,560 square feet in an acre. It all comes together. Whew. Honestly, ain't nothing to it but to memorize these numbers. I mean, there's all sorts of numbers in this section, but what I'm going over are you better know this before you even begin to think you are ready for this test kind of stuff. The stuff I'm talking about today is bare bone knowledge. If you're going, oh, I need to review that again, then you're not ready for this test because this is bare bone. That's okay. So remember, all of that was because we said we have to describe title, describe what you're selling. And we had meets and bounds. You could refer to a plat, a neighborhood map. And then third, we said, oh, we've got the government rectangular survey system. There's no right way or wrong way to do this. If you're in a state that has the government rectangular survey system, that may be what you're going to do. If you're in a state like North Carolina that doesn't use it, it's really going to depend on how old is the property. If you've got a property that started transferring hands in the 1600s, I hate to break it to you, there's not going to be a plat for that. But if you've got a modern home, there's probably a plat. So it just depends. What do you have? And a lot of times, in fact, I was talking to my friend's kid the other day, like, why am I learning algebra? I'm never going to use it. Actually, you will use some of this algebra. Actually, when you all go to sell a house, you want to make sure that what you're selling is what the seller owns. You want to make sure what the buyer is buying is what they're looking for. Understanding what a legal description is and making sure you put that information into a purchase contract. Oh, so important. That's why you have to know it. So we got those 3 ways to describe it. Well, now that we know what we're selling and we've put a name to it, it's kind of like you go to a therapist. You can't fix the problem if you don't understand that there is a problem, if you can't name the problem. Well, okay, fine. We named the piece of land. Now that we know what it is, the question is, what are we going to do with it? And the answer is to that, we're going to transfer it to someone new. So when you learned about estates in class, remember if you have an estate, you have an ownership that allows you to live there. If it's a freehold estate, you mean you own it and you can live there. So if you want to transfer that ownership to somebody else, then you could either die and it's going to go to your heirs because of intestate succession, or you could die and you have no heirs and you left no will and it escheats to the state, or you could die. I'm saying die a lot. And it could go to whoever you told it to go to in the will. And just remember, there is a difference. You know, you got devise here. We talked about demise the other day. Device, demise, just putting it out there. Important vocab words. Now, if you don't want to die in order for this to happen, you do have some other options. You could simply give it to somebody by giving them a deed. Somebody could basically steal your property with consent of a judge. That's called adverse possession. Or maybe the government needs your property to put up a new fire station. They could condemn it, say you can no longer live here, and then claim it as their own under the government's power of eminent domain. Or you could mess up, not pay your mortgage, and it gets foreclosed upon, and now they need to sell it to get their money back. Hey, there's lots of reasons why, you might be transferring. Did I just say that right? The bank, you messed up on your payments. The bank is going to sell it, get their money back. I want to make sure I said that right. But either way, lots of different reasons why you might transfer this ownership. So we know that there's deeds, and a deed is what we call voluntary alienation. Why is it voluntary alienation? Because you chose to do it. That's the voluntary part, right? And it's alienation. You're giving it to somebody else. And if you're giving a deed, you must be alive. So if you want to give somebody else a property, alienate yourself from ownership while you're alive, you could give it as a deed to somebody, or you could give it to the government, and that's where you're giving land to the government, you're dedicating it. Well, you might choose who you want your property to go to when you die, and you would do that by creating a will after you die. And if you die, well, let's come over here. If you die and you have no will, and that says will, you have no heirs, then, did I spell heirs right? Yep, I did. Then it's going to go to the state. That's what it means. If you die intestate with no will, that's what that means. And you have no heirs, it goes to the state. Your property goes to the state, which nobody wants. Don't we pay enough taxes as it is? It's fine, whichever. So if you want to die and not choose where it goes to, you say, oh, I didn't leave a will, I don't have any heirs, then you didn't choose it. It involuntarily goes to the state. Or if you don't have a will, but you do have heirs, it could go to your heirs. But this is all, again, after you die. If you don't choose for the government to take your land and they take it while you're alive, they could take it in foreclosure. It could be adversely possessed. It could be condemned. You could go bankrupt. It could be taken from the power of the eminent domain. I know you all know what those words mean, but just as a reminder, adverse possession is if you use the land long enough, somebody says, this is mine now. Condemnation is when they take your property for the good of the public. Right? Bankruptcy is where they say, well, you went bankrupt, you have to give it away. And eminent domain, that is the power. And then condemnation is, this is the power and this is the action. They are the same thing. The government has the power of eminent domain to condemn your property so that they can own it while you're alive. Woo. Okay. I know we're just getting started, guys. I know we have 10 minutes, but I told you it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a little bit of a review, but we're almost there. So again, adverse possession is if you use somebody's land too long. So you see property one right here, put a fence on property two's land. Imagine this was actually the property line. Property one said, property line, hold my beer. Nah, I'm gonna put my fence right here. Well, if we meet all the criteria, maybe it's 70 years later, property two is like, you know what, we're ready for you to take down this fence. Property one could be like, actually, yeah, you let this happen so long, it's mine now. It's finders keepers, users keepers, I guess we could call it. It's users keepers, not finders, but I used it long enough, and now the government says I can keep it. In order for somebody to make a claim, they're going to have to prove what most of you all call is ocean. Now, I teach it as high ocean because I had an attorney teach this to me when I first started teaching. But you could do this as just ocean, or you could do it as high ocean. To make a claim for adverse possession, to say, oh, well, you let me use it for so long, just give it to me now. Kind of like if you have a sibling and you let your sibling borrow a sweatshirt and they have it for the next 4 years, that's their sweatshirt now. If you leave that same sweatshirt sitting out and your mom starts yelling at you, you'd be like, that's not my sweatshirt. They've had it for 4 years. That's their sweatshirt now. They left it there. That is adverse possession. So you would have to prove your use was open, everybody knew about it. It's continuous, it has to happen for a certain amount of years. How many years? Depends on your state. Exclusive, you don't care about that one. It needs to be adverse, meaning you never had permission, and the use has to be once again notorious. Everybody had to know about it. Now, again, I teach this as high ocean. Your use has to be hostile and it has to be intentional. And again, hostile means you had no permission. You never had permission. This is why you can't rent someplace and be like, well, I've lived here for 20 years. I guess it's mine now. Absolutely not. Because when you rented, at some point you had permission and now you're getting your adverse possession claim thrown out of court. It doesn't really happen as much as you all think it does, but it is a real thing. Right? And with my luck, it would probably happen to me. I'd be like, what? That hasn't happened to anybody in the last 40 years. Just me? Okay, fine. But adverse possession is something they'll test you on. The use has to be open, continuous, exclusive, adverse, and notorious. Now, if you're trying to give somebody ownership or title to a piece of land, they want it to come problem free. When you say cloud or color on title, there's a claim, encumbrance, or condition which impairs the title. We're saying it's dirty. It's not good, clean title. It's colored. It's got yucky mud on it, right? Or it's clouded. It's not clean. It's dirty. That's what we mean a cloud on title. Your ownership or your right to own it is kind of a little shady. We're not sure what's going on there. That's what we mean by color or cloud on title. Remember, and let me take a sip of water, but if you all have questions, because I am going somewhat fast here, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat, or I can slow down if I need to. All right. So remember, a deed is the instrument, the piece of paper that conveys property. It transfers or conveys the property, and title is the right to ownership. Think of a deed like cash, and think of a title like cryptocurrency. I can spell crypto. Like you don't ever touch cryptocurrency, it just is. You don't ever touch title. When we're talking about houses, it's the right. When you have cryptocurrency, you can't touch money. You have the right to the value of it. Well, that's title. You want to talk about, oh, you physically have money and you can put it under your pillow and make sure nobody ever steals it. You gonna need some hard cold cash. A deed is the hard cold piece of paper that conveys property, and what they're conveying is the right for you to own it. They're conveying this intangible thing like cryptocurrency. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to let you just, I'm going to pause here so that when you all go back to watch this video, you can look at this slide and pause me and make sure all of these different things, deed versus title, what does it mean? How does it work? I'm assuming you all are good with it right now, but I am going to leave it here just for a second. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play. Okay, it's enough of that. So you got this piece of land. You've named the piece of land. You know, we described it. Kind of like you name your car. You can't just be driving around with your car with no name. Well, you got to name the piece of land. We got to know which car you're talking about, which piece of property you're talking about. Well, now that you want to give it away and you're voluntarily, I don't know if that's even a word. You are choosing to give it to somebody else. That's when you are going to use a deed. A deed transfers property and it must be in writing. Why? Because of the statute of frauds. We know the statute of frauds says, hey, things that are transferring ownership and real property, they got to be in writing. Well, that doesn't mean you're just going to put your name and their name and an address, a mailing address, even that's not going to be good enough. You need one of these fancy ways to describe it. The piece of paper you would use to say, hey, dear you, Candace wants you to have this property. That what transfers title is this deed. So what would have to be there is all of these things. It's got to go beyond just a name and an address. It's got to have names of both the grantor and the grantee. It cannot not have a grantee. And remember, the grantee is the new owner, because the ors and the e's, the e means this person is receiving, and the grantor is the person giving the piece of land. It's got to have words that say, oh, we're transferring ownership. It can't be like, hey, you're invited to, Cindy's Sweet 16. Absolutely not. Okay, fine. There could be an address. That could be it. But if you're trying to give the property to somebody else, there's got to be words that say, hey, I'm giving ownership to the new person. Words of conveyance or granting clause. There has to be an accurate legal description. We got to go beyond a mailing address. The grantor has to be legally, of age and have the capacity to sign. That deed needs to be delivered and accepted voluntarily. You can't just throw a piece of paper with all of this information in somebody's window and be like, "It's all messed up. You're going to need to clear it with the EPA," and then you think they're going to be responsible. In order for a deed to actually transfer title, then the new owner needs to have it delivered to them, and then they must voluntarily accept it. And then, of course, it needs to be in writing. So there you go. All of these things are the elements of a deed that have to be there, or I like to teach it as I get paid with every deal. I get paid with every deal. It must be in writing. The grantor must be competent. It has to have a proper description. It's got to have words of conveyance or, our granting clause. It's got to be executed. It needs to be signed by the grantor, not the grantee. And it needs to be delivered to the grantee and accepted by the grantee. Right? I get paid with every deal. Those are the things that have to be in a deed. However, what fun would this class be if we didn't make it confusing? Not only are they going to test you what has to be in a deed, they love, love, love to teach you and test you. Hey, do you know what doesn't have to be in a deed? Well, actually, no, test person, I don't, because I'm not an attorney. I shouldn't be writing a deed. but they want you to know it, so I'm going to teach it to you. These are things you would think have to be in a deed, but by some random stroke of law, they sound like they belong, but they do not. It's kind of like that Sesame Street thing. One of these things is not like the other. Like all of these things, yay, have to be there. These things, boo, don't need to be there. So I teach this as a diva can shop with riches. The A stands for acknowledgement, otherwise known as it needs to be notarized, or it doesn't have to be notarized. Should it be? Yes. Must it? No. These are non-musts. I don't even know if that's a word. Non-must haves. Okay. So when you have a deed, it seems like a good idea to have a third party say, yeah, this person really did want to give the house. They didn't forge anything, but it's not required. It's a non-essential element of a deed. Deeds don't have to be dated because most of you all are in states where if you got two different deeds that both say the same thing, well, then whose house is it? As far as the law is concerned, who got to the Register of Deeds first? Because that's whose house it is. There doesn't have to be consideration, which is a fancy way of saying money. There doesn't have to be a transfer of actual physical money in order for a deed to happen. It doesn't have to be sealed. Remember, we were looking at the video, not the video, the plat of the, get my words right, the survey of the lot. We were looking at the plat, which is a subdivision map. And both of them, I showed you those seals. It's an extra promise that what you're getting is good information. Hey, Caroline. Hello. Hello. Actually, I have a favor for you, Miss Caroline. I'm going to email you later. I need a little small favor, but you know you are always welcome to come and say hi. You can also, if you want to, give us an update if you want on how you're doing. And again, I was telling somebody the other day, now that you're done with your test, you are always welcome to come in and be like, Candace, I don't know what to do next. And I am going to give you a free session, but you can always ask in here too. All right. So they don't have to be sealed. They don't have to be witnessed, and they don't have to be recorded. You don't have to brush your teeth every day, but the rest of us would really like it if you do. That's like recorded. You don't have to do anything, but should you probably? Yeah. Mhm. If you want protection from the law, you should probably have that deed recorded. A diva can shop with riches. These are our non-essential elements of a deed. That's exactly where you are right now. If you picked a company, Miss Caroline, you know, I'm gonna email you. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna email you. We'll set up a time. And, or if you want, like if you have a general question, you can go ahead and ask it once, and we'll get into it. But yeah, that I think passing the test is the first hurdle. Figuring out how to get into real estate is the next hurdle. All right, we know that you all know that there are different types of deeds. Again, I'm not gonna just go into depth on this one, but I'm sick of orange. We know a general warranty deed is the strongest type of deed because it gives you protection and it has 6 covenants. The covenant of season, the covenant of right to convey, the covenant against encumbrances, the covenant of quiet enjoyment, the covenant of warranty forever, or the grantee's right to recovery. Now, also remember, if you're looking at my slides, this could also be called the full covenant and warranty deed, or just a warranty deed. Any of these names would work. And just so you all have it, if you want to look it over, you know that here are those promises or covenants I just listed. They tend to ask you about this one, the covenant of season. And that's basically saying, hey, I'm giving this land to you, and I'm actually the owner who has the legal right to give it to you. We like that one. And if you wanted a good way to remember all of those, sell real estate quickly with full confidence. I'll be honest, they don't ask about this one a whole lot like they do the last one, but like the elements of a deed, but you still should be aware of it. Next, we have a special warranty deed. And we know the special warranty deed is all about time. That's why I made it an hourglass. So in a special warranty deed, you get less promises, get less guarantees. So what the seller or the grantor, what the seller or grantor is saying is, look, I have title. I didn't mess it up. The current owner didn't touch it. I didn't mess it up. Maybe the person before me did, but I didn't mess it up. And that if somebody does come and claims I messed it up, I'm not coming to protect you if it was from before. If it was from before, that makes sense. So if somebody were to, let's say I sold my property to Caroline, and 6 months later they come and they go, hey, Caroline, I know you didn't do it, and I know you bought the property from Candace, but the person who owned it before Candace, they totally messed this up. They messed up the title work. They messed up, oh, you're supposed to get 4 acres instead of 6 acres. Mm. In a special warranty deed, this is the owner saying, I'm only promising I didn't mess it up. The person that owned it before Candace, they were a real, I'm gonna swear, they're a real dirty mess. I won't swear. They're a real dirty mess. And so I can't help you with the ownership before me. I'm only promising that Candace didn't mess it up. That makes sense? Yes. When your license is in process, what do I do? Can I go to a broker or do I wait for my license? You know what? In California, I'm not sure, but by the time, send me that email, I'll look into it. And by the time we meet, and I can give you some questions you need to ask, I will have that answer for you. Because I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. All right, our last, not our last type of deed, our third type of deed they're going to ask you about is a quitclaim deed, which I like to call hot potato. If somebody gives you a quitclaim deed, they're just going, it ain't mine anymore. My name is Bennett. I ain't in it. Not my problem. I'm not even telling you I owned it. I'm saying I have nothing to do with it. Don't call me. I don't know you. I was never here. You get no promises with a quitclaim deed. Right? So sometimes it happens to be used in foreclosure sales. Banks will be like, I'm not interested. Look, I didn't even live here. We just wanted to get our money out. Look, we don't know what somebody did or didn't do, what taxes they paid or didn't pay. We're just saying it's yours now. So it's usually used to clear a title defect, like a mechanic's lien or something like that. But it can find, its way in lots of different real estate situations. And there's no warranties and there's no covenants. For some of you all, you're in states where you use what's called a grant deed, and the grant deed is like above a quick claim deed, but not as cool as a special warranty deed. Also, not all states use grant deeds, so just be careful with that. So in that, you only get two guarantees. This is the owner, the current owner saying, look, I didn't sell it to anybody else. And as far as I know, there's no monies owed or other encumbrances going on here. Okay. Now, just as a review, you do have other types of deeds. That's a question for another class, but just make sure on this list you understand what each of those are. And I'll take a second so you can look at this as well. This is talking about different deed types. So deed types are going down. And then what they promise you, some of the promises are right here. So that's, if you need this information. So if you want to remember our different types of deeds, good students bring quality. General warranty deed, special warranty deed, bargain and sale deed, and a quitclaim deed. General warranty, special warranty, bargain and sale, quitclaim. This, remember, has 0 promises, and this one has all the promises. So when you're looking, trying to figure this out, good students bring quality. It's also in the order of strength. Yay, you're gonna call. a couple of brokers. I have a video on what to ask, but I will do a one-on-one with you as well and make sure you know exactly how comfortable you are with everything. All right, we're almost done with this chapter. You know that title is what you have. It's that non-tangible. It's our cryptocurrency. It's that right to own something. So, how do you make sure that what you're getting isn't bad? Just like if you went to the store and you bought some meat, you would check the meat for the expiration date and make sure it wasn't a week ago. Okay, that's meat. When you buy a piece of land, you're going to want some assurances that what you're getting is good. Assurances. So, what do you do to make sure you're getting good title when you want to buy a house? First, you ask for a warranty deed. Remember, the warranty deed was the one that covered the most stuff. Look at it, it covers the most stuff. Yeah. So if you want to make sure you're getting good ownership, say, look, when you give me ownership of this house, I want a general warranty deed, which says if somebody comes and knocks on my door and says this is their house, you are going to pay to fix it for me. You're going to fix this. We should not be doing this. Now, in North Carolina, we have something called the OTP, which is our offer to purchase contract. That's where it's stated. But if you're in another state besides North Carolina, you need to look at your contracts and know, what does your contract say about this? That's one good way to make sure you're getting good title. Another way is to do a title exam. You know what it means to have things recorded. It kind of goes into an oven. Into an oven. Where did I get that from? Into an oven. Well, I guess it's kind of like an oven. It gets all warm in there. Either way, you know what it means to have something recorded. You can pay somebody to go to the Register of Deeds and look and see, are there any liens or encumbrances? Or remember, we talked to color of title, cloud and title. You can have somebody check to see, is anything shady going on here? I should hope everybody buying a house has this done first. And when you have the title or the chain of title, who owned it, kind of like that line in the Bible, and this person begat that person, and this person begat that person, and this person begat that person. You pay somebody to find all the begats and make sure if there's any remaining liens or encumbrances, they are taken care of before there's a new owner. Now, when the person goes to check the Register of Deeds, they're getting a chain of title, which is just a history. This person begat that person, who begat this person, who begat that person. You could do an abstract of title, which is, in your opinion, when you get some more details, what do you think is going on here? But you're not an attorney. You can do research as a non-attorney, but at the end of the day, they want somebody with a legal degree to look at everything. So when they do a title exam, they want somebody with a law degree to make sure there's no liens or no other encumbrances that are coming to bite you in the butt. So when you do a title exam or you hire somebody to do the title work, it's one of the ways you're trying to make sure you're not getting swindled. You're getting this title examination, you're getting a chain of title, you're getting an abstract of title, you're getting the attorney's opinion of the title. Right? You want to make sure it's definitely your house? Record the deed. Record the deed. Do deeds have to be recorded? Well, let's go see. Deeds don't have to be recorded. Is it a good idea? Yes. But does it have to be? Absolutely not. So if you want to protect yourself, you would record it. Ah, I'm getting back to it. Sorry. So you're going to ask for an attorney's opinion of title. Oh, sorry, that's not what we're talking about. You're going to get it recorded to make sure that nobody comes in and does or says something that you didn't want it to do or say, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. People do get confused about this idea of a chain of title and abstract of title. Just remember a chain of title is just owners. Who begat who? Somebody begat somebody who begat somebody who begat somebody. Versus an abstract of title tells mostly everything. Anything related to that property, you would find, oh, there was a lien, and then they paid off the lien, and they were good for a while, and oh, here comes another lien, and then they paid that off, and then oh my gosh, if you want to see all the dirty details, that's the abstract of title. If you just want to see its pedigree, and this person begat this person, and this person begat that person, that would be your chain of title. Sometimes you might hear the term marketable title, and it's exactly what it sounds like. If I wanted to sell this, could I put it on an open market? Could I put it on Craigslist and get it sold? I don't know. Does anybody want to buy it? That's what we mean when we say marketable title. We're talking about meat that's in unusually good meat. Well, I guess, but I want to call it meat. I don't know. We're talking about real estate that is in great condition. So there can't be any negative, encumbrances or liens on the property. There can't be any serious defect in the title. There can't be any questions that something is valid, right? There has to be a promise from somebody that, hey, if somebody knocks on your door and says this is theirs, we'll help you. It needs to have some kind of involvement from that original grantor. And it's got to be basically a property that somebody else would be willing to buy. We want to make sure, again, this is about title assurance. You want to make sure this is something that somebody think has value. A suit to quiet title is when the title is dirty. Maybe somebody's going, oh, you know that Brandy and Monica song, The Boy Is Mine? They go sue somebody in court. They sue each other in court, and then the judge says, "Okay, Brandy, he's yours," or "Okay, Monica, he's yours." That is a suit to quiet title. This is the judge going, "All right, let's clear it up so Brandy and Monica don't have a question about whose boy it is." Right? They just want to know. They want somebody to come in and say, "This is who the property belongs to." That is a suit to quiet title. Get rid of all the stuff that's making it dirty. Let's make it clean. Mhm. And then finally, the last thing you can do if you want to make sure you're getting good title is to buy title insurance. Now, for years, I was taught title insurance came because of the Chicago title of the Chicago fire of 1783. No, maybe that's 18. It's some year. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's some year in history. Okay. Alexa, when was the Great Fire in Chicago?
The Great Chicago Fire burned from October 8 through October 10, 1871.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was multi days. Multiple days in Chicago, it burned. And I was told that's where title insurance comes from. Turns out that's a lie. Mhm. Wikipedia says something completely different. We're not getting into it, but I'm still going to go with the fire because it's so much more dramatic and I like it. So, what happens is when you get title insurance, you actually want two different policies, an owner's policy and a lender's policy. Title insurance is about title. If somebody, so let's say I want to give Trix a piece of property. If Trix owns this, she's the new owner. And then 5 weeks later, Caroline comes and says, "Oh no, Trix, this is actually my property. Get out." They go through all this legal boohoo, legal just mumbo jumbo, just it's a mess. And the judge is like, "Ooh, Trix, about that. It's not yours." Caroline could go, it's Caroline's property. She walks away with it. And now Trix is going to go to her title insurance company and be like, "Give me back my money." That's title insurance. It's a policy for the owner. In case you lose title, they'll make your loss. They'll cover some of your losses. But don't get it twisted. If, let's say, Trix bought this property and it was worth $550,000, and to buy it, she got a loan for $450,000. So the property is worth 550, but she got a loan for $450,000. That means she only has $100,000 in equity. If she lost ownership of this property, her owner's policy would take care of that $100,000 in equity. However, if she's got a loan, the lender gets a policy, and that's going to cover any of the lender's investment. It's an insurance policy to protect the bank. Both of them are a one-time premium, and in my state, they're paid by borrower, not all states. And you can see when you go to buy title insurance, you're going to get different types of options. And I know it's hard to see here, but you get a standard option or you get an enhanced option. Now, this is just of this company. Enhanced, extended, whatever. You can get basic. You can go to Walmart or you can go to Walmart. That's the standard policy. Or you could go to, I don't know, Nordstrom. That's the nice policy. That's the extended policy. That's going to cover more things. Do you want a standard policy or do you want an enhanced policy? And even though I didn't really put these up here for you to read, notice right about here, if you just got the standard policy, you're not covered on any of these things. That's supposed to say no, but that was awful. If you got the enhanced policy, well, then yes, they would cover these things. So you just need to understand as a basic idea that title insurance protects both the borrower and the bank. Now, what it protects from, it depends. Which type of insurance policy did you get, standard or enhanced? Now, this is from a title company called Old Republic. I like them. I like them a lot. But there's other companies here. You see, this is from a company called Investors Title. And they have what's called, just an owner's policy. And this one's a homeowner's policy. This is our extended coverage. And this is our basic. This is the Walmart. And the same thing. At some point, once you get down here, you are sad. They would not cover if any of those things happened here on a standard policy. But if you paid the extra money for, an enhanced, more expensive one, and not even that much more expensive, you'll be covered for those things. All right. Look, that was the second page there. So I don't know if you all can see that. Look at that list. It starts on this page, and none of this right here is being covered. And none of this is being covered when you could have just gotten the extended policy and covered all those things. Talk to your title insurance person what you need. So you got things that are covered by a standard policy. There are things that are covered by an extended or enhanced coverage. And there are things that are not covered by either party. This is probably in the weeds, but I wanted to give it to you so that if you want to read it on your own, you can. But just knowing that there's there's two policies and which one you want, that's huge. And these are just talking about the exceptions, things where they would not, pay for. And again, that's probably going to be too over the top for you all. And I know that we've already talked about this, but you record things at the Register of Deeds office and a copy is placed in chronological order. And there you go. So anybody can go check the Register of Deeds to see what's going on. And that, boys and girls, whew, that took me an hour and a half almost. And I know I was talking funky and fast, and I swear my sugar crash ended halfway through this. I ate way too much sugar at the Father's Day thing. So hopefully, if I was talking in circles, you will forgive me. And more importantly, I hope this was a good review for you all. Whew. Any immediate questions? Any immediate questions? I didn't think that was going to take as long as it did, but there was a lot. There was a lot. That was good. Oh, that was great. Thank you, Marily. That I hope so. I hope so. Like I did with the one on finance, I will take this, I will shorten out some of the conversation, and I'll make it a video you can watch so it's not just part of the live. And as always, if you have questions, you know I'll be back here next Wednesday. Miss Caroline, I'm going to meet with you. You're going to email me. We'll make sure you get started correctly. Um, I'm going to give you my very best coaching information. There's a whole, when I'm coaching people getting started, I have a whole thing. So I'm hoping that will help. And guys, I'm going to go take a nap from my sugar crash. My sugar crash just, it came while I was teaching. So if I didn't make sense, let me know and we'll do it again. But guys, happy Father's Day. I hope you too had a lot of sugar. Maybe you didn't get the crash, but I hope you too had a lot of sugar and you enjoyed all the amazing fathers and grandfathers and all the men in your life. Bye, everybody.